in other words, we can justify our actions for whatever we do.
Yeah.
We can justify our actions for showing up greatly for our families, taking the risk of bettering ourselves. It's an investment, right? In time and money to better ourselves. But we can also justify why we don't take action.
Yeah.
Why it's not the right time.
Yeah.
It's not the right time in my business life.
Yeah.
My kids are 5 and 6.
Yeah.
I can't do it now. I'll wait till they get older.
Yeah.
And those justifications are what cripple us. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the TPM Show. And today we're greeted with none other than Coach Mark Smith. Mark has been here at the TPM Ranch doing what he does best, which is empowering men from around the world, coaching them, guiding them, and giving them mentorships that they need. And today is a really important podcast episode because Mark and I are going to talk about something that we hear most commonly from men. This is one of probably the top 5 issues we're seeing in men today. So stick around, and at the end of the episode, we're going to give you some tools to how you can change this mindset. Mark, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Doug.
Yeah, it's been so much fun, the team retreat and everything else, and Alpha Risings, Alpha Resets. You've been a busy boy.
Yeah. It's been a whole lot of energy expended and received.
There you go. As long as it's 2 ways, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what I want to talk to you about, and we talked a little bit of this off camera, is something that we hear from a lot of men, and I've been guilty of this myself, is this notion of if I wait it out, it'll get better. Kind of this idea like, hey, now's not the right time. I'll do it someday. Or I need to wait until later to do it. Or, hey, you know what? My wife's mad at me. And maybe if I just keep quiet and wait it out next month, next year, things will be better.
It's the same thing with debt, isn't it? I'll just ignore the interest rates are going up or whatever. I'll just ignore it until such time as, that business comes in, et cetera, and then it'll work out. And oftentimes we get caught out because waiting leaves us with virtually zero control over the outcome.
Yeah, and so if we have zero control, essentially what we're doing, and guys are going to hate this when I call it out, is you're being a victim.
Yeah.
You're giving your power away to something external of you. You're throwing your hands up in the air saying, I can't do anything about this, or I won't because I'm too scared, is really what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then they're playing the victim card.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other word for that in terms of a victim would be the king abdicating his kingdom.
Yeah.
It is not taking leadership, is actually allowing things to just to run their course. And there's a certain strategic benefit to timing, and timing, it can be extremely important. However, there's a difference between choosing timing and allowing something to just run its course, and hope is not a strategy.
No, exactly.
Hoping something is going to get better will never work.
Yeah, I say it's surviving off hopium, like you're smoking hopium, hoping it's going to work at the end of the day. And I've seen this in other categories. Like, the reason you and I were talking about this, we just had our team retreat. I think there was 34 people that make this movement we call TPM actually work going forward. And I was talking to a group of the advisors. So for those guys that don't know, the advisors, when you schedule a call to figure out if a TPM program is going to work for you, 1 is you fill out an application to see if you can get through. 2 is the advisors are going to figure out what your story is, right?
Yeah. Hey,
why are you on the phone? What's going on? What's your situation? And if TPM is not the right fit, they're going to tell you that and advise that you go somewhere else or give you some insights. And so I asked him, I go, look, what's the number 1 reason that when you're on a phone with a man, he recognizes that something has to change, but he doesn't take action? And unanimously, they gave me about 6 things. And the underlying current was they're hoping it'll just get better on its own if they wait it out. And that seems so odd to me, but yet I can reflect back on other conversations I've had with people. And it could be as simple as, I want to get in shape, but you know what? I got the 4th of July is coming up here in the States, and I know I'm going to be eating burgers and drinking beer.
Yeah.
The 6th of July. That's when I'm going to start working out and exercising. Not today before, and allow myself to have a good 4th of July. But they'll wait, and I think what they're doing, Mark, is they're pushing the work or the hope for success further down the line because they're scared if they actually take action and it doesn't work, what does that mean about them?
Yeah. It's delaying the inevitable.
Yeah.
Right. At some point, you're going to have to face it. In my experience, going back to the debt analogy, it just gets bigger. Right?
Yeah.
The interest rate keeps on piling on,
100%.
the interest. And typically what happens in those cases, the guys push it off and they'll speak to an advisor at TPM and push it off. And some of the advisors will come back to me and say, I spoke to this guy 6 months ago and he contacted me again because now it's got worse.
Yep.
Right. And that's typically what happens. You hope, put your head in the sand, and the situation does get worse. It doesn't stay static. It doesn't get better. It gets worse.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
I was talking to a guy today, and he and his wife are fighting. And his explanation is his wife is fighting him, right?
Okay.
More or less. But he goes, Doug, like, I'm getting all of these lengthy text messages, just tons of telling her that I don't appreciate her, I'm not there for her, and like basically she doesn't want me in her life anymore. Now they've been married for a long time, together as a couple, dating for much longer. And I just, as he was explaining his story, I was listening, and I go, how long has this been going on? He's like, man, it's been 2 days, just continuous, and I've been out of the house. She doesn't want me around. I said, well, okay, what's your plan? He's like, well, I'm trying to figure it out and respond to these messages as they come in and see if I can make the situation a little bit better. And I looked at him because I was able to just look him in the face, and I said, hey, man, why don't you just go over there now and talk to her and nip this in the bud now rather than waiting, because it's not going to get better.
No.
It actually is going to snowball, and it's going to get worse and worse, and stories compile more and more and more. And I also see this with men who have had marital problems for months or years, right? They think, I'll wait till next month, or, you know what, Q4 would be better financially for me to make a commitment or for me to take the time out of my life. And the truth is, waiting only actually exacerbates the problem and makes it much, much worse. You're giving a gap for the other person, in this case, this guy's wife, to make up more and more stories against you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same as guys saying that they are not in the right position right now to go and do an alpha reset. I say to them, there's never going to be a right time.
Yes.
And fortunately for us and unfortunately for us, the only time we have to take action is right now. I cannot be in the future,
Yes.
taking action.
100%. And as you know, what's the number one thing guys say after an alpha reset or after the activation method? I wish I would have
done it sooner or done it years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they can't, right? And so, men listening to this or watching this on YouTube or Spotify or what have you, if you go to our website, you'll see hundreds of men doing video testimonials. These aren't guys that necessarily want to be on camera. We don't force them.
Nope.
But they wish somebody else would have reached out to them years ago. So they're going, hey, I'm going to pay this forward. I'm going to speak my truth in the hopes that, I wish it would reach a younger version of me and I can help another guy not make the same mistake I have.
Yeah. So what would you say is the antidote to hopium?
Action.
Simple.
Yeah, it is. It is really simple. So I don't know who I learned this from, but I learned on really early in my personal development journey, my 20s, maybe even earlier before that, is take the smallest actionable step possible.
Okay.
Because that gives you momentum, right? Yeah. You kind of have to, it's like, this is going to be a crass analogy, but I'll use it anyway. Because, when you have to go, you're out somewhere and you can't go to the bathroom, you don't want to break the seal, as guys say.
Oops.
Because once you break the seal, you have to pee a lot more frequently.
Yeah.
I was at the rodeo when I was with you, actually, and Josh and a couple other people.
Yeah.
Someone said that to me.
Okay.
And I think it's appropriate because you need to break the seal of your problem or action. And just taking that first immediate step. So for this gentleman that I was talking to, his wife was mad at him texting him. First thing I go, could you just drive home right now? Yes. Get in the truck, do that now.
Yeah.
Right. And what happens when you get in the door, you'll figure that part out.
Yeah.
And it may not work perfectly, but it's a catalyst for future action.
Yeah.
And I'll also see for a man listening to this right now who's on the treadmill or out for a walk doing his ARS, I hope, let's get on a call with an advisor.
Yeah.
Right. The calls, no one forces anybody to do anything. Just get on a phone call, show up real, and have a conversation and see if TPM is the right fit for you, or or do another program.
Yeah. I think you made a good point there, is that there's no force, and TPM isn't for everybody.
No.
So we qualify guys whether they're right for us and vice versa. So there's an opportunity to at least have, and our advisors are exceptional in terms of their ability to read a situation and give some immediate input as to some breaking the seal type actions that you can take to immediately have a positive benefit. And the challenge with that is that, you know, you take that step that somebody, either a friend or an advisor at TPM, gives you, and it has a small result, right? Oh, she's got off my case, or, you know, that situation has been remediated slightly, and then they stop. Yeah. Go back into Hopium.
Yeah.
So I've taken a step. I'll go back into laissez-faire, and let's see what happens. You know, and seeing what happens is not a strategy either. You know, allowing things to just evolve in terms of a situation that needs a solution is a damaging strategy. The only thing that I've found that works in my life is consistent, and I fall over, you know, make mistakes. We're all human.
Yeah.
But I get back on the horse, and I keep going, and I keep going, and I keep working at it, because it's not something that'll ever resolve itself. Life doesn't resolve itself.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, our programs are for business owners and C-suite executives. Now, we did open a program for their employees called TPM Navigate. That is available for employees. It's a totally separate program that guys can go through just to help more men. But when I think about this situation, and I think about all these business owners and, you know, executives that are calling up, that are making decisions on a daily basis, I would never, right? I've run a lot of companies. I would never run a business being like, wow, sales are down, you know, complaints are up. You know what? Let's just wait and see how it goes.
Yeah. Let's hope Q3 is better than Q2.
But no plan.
Cross fingers.
No plan, no action.
Yeah.
I don't want to disrupt our sales team or our product development team because I don't want them to get upset.
Yeah.
That's no way. No one would do that. They would take immediate action, diagnose the problem, and they would say, hey, sales are down. Is that marketing? Okay, great. Maybe our marketing is not good. Let's hire a consultant. Let's get a marketing coach. Let's bring in a CMO. Let's bring in help.
Yeah.
But yet in the most important territory for all the men, which is going to be our relationships, right? When you're looking back, sitting on that rocking chair, sipping some iced tea or bourbon or whatever it may be for you in your 80s or 90s, reflecting on your life, it's not going to be your business decisions you're reflecting on positively. It's your relationships.
Yeah.
Yet yet a lot of men, and this was me back at Doug 1.0.
Yeah.
We don't invest our time, resources, energy into developing those relationships or learning how to develop those relationships. Instead, we put our head down.
Yeah, it's like having great health insurance, smoking and drinking, knowing that I've got insurance, you know, down the line. It'll eventually work itself out. I'll have the resources then. Yeah. May not work out. It may be too late.
It may be too late. And that's kind of the old joke, right? Is wealthy people spend all their wealth trying to get healthy. So they sacrifice their health to get wealth, and they flip the coin.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of us guys have done that in our relationships, right? We put our head down. Hey, I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to make money. I'm going to provide for my family, Mark. I'm going to make sure that they are good, and they're going to love me for it. And then they're out of resources. They get home, they're tired, they're grumpy, they've had a bad day. And then next thing they know, fast forward 1, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe, throw some kids in the mix, make it more stressful, you know, and they look around, they're like, where is everybody? Why isn't everybody thanking me for all my hard work? But yet they haven't put in the time and effort into that relationship. And learning the skills, it's not inherent as we might think it is.
Yeah. Well, I had the experience of not seeing my kids, as you know, because they were separated from me for sometimes an extended period. And I've had to put in the work retrospectively to build those relationships. And really, obviously, I did all the way along. But like I said, it was every couple of weeks or every couple of months in some cases. And so the lesson from that is, and what I speak to guys about is every single day, pay attention to your daughter and pay attention to your son, pay attention to your wife, listen to them, learn their preferences, be curious, because taking action, as you said, is what drives the connection, and what drives the connection builds trust and builds intimacy. And that is a solid foundation for any man in his life from which he can build anything, any business, right? Once you've got that foundation. And putting that last, or putting your head in the sand, or relying on hopium to build your foundation for your life, for me, seems like it's a suicidal strategy.
It is, man. I mean, imagine your kids. What if you would have said, you know what? I'm just going to wait another 10 years, 5 years, a year, and hope that things get better. Hope that they figure out the story that potentially their mother told them wasn't true, or whatever else narrative they're being fed.
Yeah.
And so many men have to unwind that stuff because they have waited. But it's not too late, right?
No,
it's
never.
Never too late. You and I have seen people in their 60s, or even later. And some people I'm talking about. They pull up the plane from the nosedive and reconnect with kids, their children who are adults in their 40s, and reestablish that love and connection so they can move forward.
Yeah. I actually hopped on a call with a colleague, with Andy, earlier on, and he was on a call with a guy who'd been at the Alpha Reset with me. And after that guy left, Andy said to me, "What the heck did you do to him at the reset?" Because he literally was in a nosedive, and he was the one wanting to end the relationship because he couldn't see a way out, and he was hoping that it would get better. Fortunately for him, he took some massive action, jumped into the reset, and had a huge epiphany, realized that he had to take responsibility and change his energy, his behavior, his attitude, his communication, a whole lot of stuff. And fortunately for him, he did that, and things are really on the up and up. And the interesting thing is, as a result of really diving into his relationship and what matters most in his life, his business is taking off in parallel.
I love that. For listeners that don't know, the Alpha Reset event that you're talking about is our 4-day intensive immersion experience. And I would say, because we do an anonymous survey on that, Mark, as you know, the resets I've done, I would say 100% of the men say it's in the top 3 most life-transforming events that have happened in their life. Next to having kids, next to meeting their creator, or what have you, and seeing that done. And almost every guy has a reason to put it off.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Guys, afterwards, they say to me, I was doing my best to find an excuse or a reason not to do this, because somewhere in our subconscious, we know that in order to get better, we're going to have to face some things about ourselves, and that may be uncomfortable. And like I said, going back to the debt analogy, putting all of the debts out on a piece of paper is uncomfortable, because you have to see, what you owe, and that can feel like a burden. And yet, the only way to essentially consume it is eat it piece by piece.
100%. And face it, right? That's the deal. As the reason guys have excuses for the Alpha Reset, let's see. My business can't run without me. Can't be away from my wife and my kids. My wife has X, Y, and Z. My wife's giving me pushback. Super common, right?
Yeah.
These are all reasons that men don't get on calls with an advisor.
Yeah.
These are all reasons that men don't show up for a program like the activation method. And they're very common. So some people might think, I can imagine myself listening to this, we were talking about putting something off. What does my wife giving me a hard time have to do with that? They don't correlate. And I think it's completely opposite, right? It's about leadership.
Yeah.
And making excuses. Like, we're justifying machines. I am, right? Yeah. When I tell this story a lot because I did this. When I was in my early 20s, I was paid to be a researcher for the International Sports Science Association. I was the assistant director of education for them. So I researched, and I was on the phones with doctors, chiropractors, and helping them with information if their clients had issues. And in that, I was on PubMed, which is this thing where you can look at all the medical published journals and things. And so when I quit drinking coffee, right, I could quote you all these studies on why coffee's bad for you. Then I started drinking coffee again about a month later, and I could show you all these studies on how great coffee is for you. It's great for cognition, And in other words, we can justify our actions for whatever we do.
Yeah.
We can justify our actions for showing up greatly for our families, taking the risk of bettering ourselves. It's an investment, right? In time and money to better ourselves. But we can also justify why we don't take action.
Yeah.
Why it's not the right time.
Yeah.
It's not the right time in my business life.
Yeah.
My kids are 5 and 6.
Yeah.
I can't do it now. I'll wait till they get older.
Yeah.
And those justifications are what cripple us.
And then we get into triage, right?
Yes.
And then suddenly there's a cataclysmic event and you've got no choice. Because then you've got drips and various things and you're in the ER. And it's the same thing, are you going to wait for your relationship to implode and then take massive action purely and simply because you want to avoid an expensive divorce? Meanwhile, during the Hopium period, the kids have been watching everything. They've been absorbing it.
Hey guys, I just want to share something with you. I'm sure we can both agree that in order to fix something, you need to know what's broken. And not only need to know what's broken, but a step-by-step methodology on how you can fix it. That's the easiest way to do it, right? Otherwise, you're going to be toiling with things. That's why I created a free training, a training that not only shows you how you got to where you are, where your relationship is missing that love, respect, admiration, and even intimacy that it used to have, to how you get it back. How do you retain that where your wife's looking at you the same way she used to look at you when she said, I do? I don't know about you, but for me, when my wife looks at me like I'm her man, that I feel like I can conquer the world. And I want that for you. Simply go over to thepowerfulman.com/scales. That's thepowerfulman.com/scales. And I have a free video training for you. You can just click play and see if this resonates for you. Now back to the podcast.
You've got years and years of work to do thereafter to help the kids regulate and to repair the relationship. So why not get ahead of it? I don't understand it. It's for me, somehow, somewhere, I'm very grateful. The relationship being first and primarily building a strong, solid family was more important than the business.
Yes, and that you're smart, you learned this along your way.
Yeah.
I didn't early on. I thought I got married, checked the box. Now my job is to put my head down, and so I can get the house with the picket fence and all of that good stuff. And that's what I did. And I looked up and I'm like, why is this not working? It was just and TPM wasn't around then. So I didn't have an activation. I didn't have a proven methodology, the activation method that thousands of men have been through and have worked for. So there wasn't that out there, that roadmap.
Yeah.
And I think we putter along, right? And think about golf, right? So I want to start getting into golf.
Yeah.
What's the first thing I did is I reached out to a golf instructor to take golf lessons, right? Shorten the learning curve, shorten the time gap. I don't have a ton of time. I don't have 10 years of doing bad swings out in a golf course, throwing clubs at people or whatever.
You mean you're not like me as a golfer?
Yeah, I'm horrible. I call myself a bachelor party golfer. Right? Oh, right. I go out and have a good time.
I say golf is my handicap.
Yeah. So something I want to get into, and I think a lot of guys can relate to this, is you get a coach. You get somebody to help you along the way.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, relationships or the Blueprint, which is our program that we have for men that are just a little stuck and unsure. Relationship is good for those guys. They're just a little stuck and unsure on their next path in life. And that's been a proven program. We don't talk about that one as much. That actually helps guys along the way. But the first thing you have to do is you have to be an inquiry, right? Curious inquiry. And when you're in curious inquiry, you're asking yourself the question, what do I want? Is what I'm doing now working for me? Right. And if not, what else is a possibility? And the hardest part is actually going out and investigating. It's easy to be a keyboard jockey, sit behind your keyboard, ask ChatGPT, what's the best way to repair my marriage? But actually getting on a phone call and talking to somebody. And this could be golf too, right? Calling the golf course and asking for a PGA pro or somebody to work with, and actually talking to the golf instructor is very different.
Yeah, and it's like guys will say, well, I'll just get Doug's book and I'll do that, version. Well, I've read many golf books.
Yes.
And I'm nowhere near Tiger Woods. What I have done is worked on myself continuously for many, many years and been willing to turn around and face the things that have been difficult, and that has moved the needle.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you have to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with reading a golf book and going out to the course.
yeah, no, absolutely.
It's a big difference. I mean, to use a different analogy I use a lot, I was interested at one time about flying planes. Right? We have a small airport nearby, and I started reading about how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
Would I get in the cockpit by myself? No friggin' way.
No.
But you read the book and you get the professional guidance along the way to help you in your particular, like, what are your limitations, Doug? You know, oh, did I mention I'm afraid of heights?
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. These small little things that set us back. So we go from a curious framework, like, so is what's happening now working to me? And the way that I look at that, Mark, is my situation serving me to the best of my ability? So if it was relationship, and I had this conversation today with a guy, I said, are you settling? And it's okay if you consciously are settling for what, but are you settling for, and are you happy?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm settling, and no, this is not what I want. Okay. Now we have something to work with, right? Things aren't good.
Yeah.
Now, what can we do to make them better?
Yeah.
You know, and how do we do it as quickly as possible? You and I both know that, gosh, when our relationship's not working, it bleeds into every category.
Yep. I thought it was just me, Doug.
No, and you just can't concentrate at all on what's going on.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And then that's where the action step comes in.
Well, that's why it's foundational, isn't it? Because if something isn't working in our love life and in the family unit, I challenge any man to have a great day and have that not affect you at some level. I mean, guys will put on a mask and pretend, go and do meetings, and they'll go and potentially even close a huge deal.
Yeah.
At the same time, driving home from that huge deal, that, you know, I can't really phone her because I just yelled at her or called her names or whatever it is, or I'm shrouded in shame, doesn't make for a great celebration.
Yeah.
You know, so it impacts everything.
It totally does. So, gosh, yesterday morning, I woke up, didn't have a good night's sleep. I had the kids in the bed. My wife she's a morning person, chipper as can be with coffee. And so we got in a disagreement. You know, it was about a trip that we wanted to take, and we saw the trip very differently.
Okay.
And so we got in a disagreement, and we quickly repaired, right? We used the hidden motives technique, or I used the hidden motives technique, I should say.
Well done.
Thank you. You got to eat your own cooking.
Yep.
So I used the hidden motives technique, and there was a little voice in the back of my head, Mark, that was like, you know, kind of the teenager, don't do it, just, you know, kind of get angry.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is not what I want.
No.
And I reflected on this after the conversation. We had repair, and I reflected on this, and I was like, man, that would have been an argument that would have lasted at least 2 weeks of disconnect. Yeah. Oh, we're both stubborn as all can't get out. So it'd have been walls put up. It would have been stonewalling. Like, you know, I'm really good at the stonewalling thing.
Yeah.
And be a passive aggressiveness, all the bad things, right? That's what we've done. And then we wouldn't have there'd be no intimacy. We'd both be disconnected, and it just wouldn't have worked. Yeah. Now, so that was yesterday morning. Repaired it, reconnected, great. And then a family emergency happened today where my wife really needed me. She needed me in a big way.
Okay.
And if I wouldn't have repaired that, Mark, she wouldn't have come to me.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
So there's the impact right there.
The huge impact. Yeah. And guys, I think a lot of men don't realize that their wives are struggling. Yeah. Right. They're crying in the showers. We hear this all the time. Yeah. Because they don't want their husband to know. Yeah. They don't want to appear weak. Yeah. And there's little events like this, right? Maybe your wife is wanting to come to you, but she's scared, or she's pissed at you, or mad, or whatever it is. And I can tell you, man, all the money I've invested in my own growth, I would have doubled that amount, which is a lot of money, just to be able to have that moment to be there for my wife.
Yeah, I love that. Something that occurs to me, and I'm linking it back to the topic of taking action and really stepping up for ourselves and for our families, and getting a coach and being willing to take guidance, because a lot of business owners are like, well, I know what I'm doing. You know, I've been doing this for years. So that's also partly part of the objection could be a bit of arrogance. You know, I'm a smart man. I'll figure this out. I'll move my way through. Listening to her and what she wants, listening to a coach, being willing to listen to that inner voice in you that says, you know, just take a step back and hear what she has to say and validate that it's extremely possible that she could be right, for her,
Yeah.
and then taking action, being willing to drop the guard is something that I found hugely useful. My self-righteous indignation and arrogance would come to play, and then I'd catch myself. I've learned to catch myself, and then immediately go into, I did that really badly, or I started that off really in a way that I didn't mean to, and it's my ego or whatever getting in the way. Can I have a redo?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for pushing you away, or whatever it is, the stonewalling you mentioned, that kind of thing. And as a consequence, my wife and I, we don't have arguments. We're very strong personalities, both of us, and we push back. But it's not an argument. It's people will often say to us, "Jeepers, you two, like tone it down." And we're not having an argument. We're just disagreeing with each other, and there's no disconnect. Right, the relationship is solid and stays there, even though the subject is disagreeable.
Yeah.
Once the subject's over, we'll go, oh, okay, agree to disagree. And then we're holding hands and cuddling each other, and people are like, what? Because one of the things that we go through and teach in TPM is that emotional intelligence, that emotionally intelligent listening, hidden motives is part of it. There are a couple of processes we take guys through that really pragmatically helps you to repair a disconnect at an emotional level. And also, if I have my way, guys carry on doing the work and are willing to create and construct a relationship at the foundational level, which is pretty unbreakable. If you work for years on it, it can last you a lifetime.
Absolutely. And the thing I loved a lot of the things that you said there that you're doing with Bonnie. And also, how long did you wait to have that redo?
I don't wait.
Exactly.
Hit it straight on the head.
Absolutely. Well, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
And again, men are doing exactly what you do in business. They're doing it in all kinds of other areas.
Yeah.
And the point of this conversation is to kind of grab a guy, give him a little shake if he's doing this in his area of his relationship or his health or whatever else it might be.
Yeah.
It's you gotta be in a state of inquiry and then a state of action.
Yeah. The other piece that I think might be useful for guys to know is we've worked with many, many, many men over many years.
Yeah.
We know what the hell we're doing,
Yeah.
right? You don't go to a doctor and say, oh, I'll stitch myself up. You just write the script.
Yeah. It's 100%.
Trust the process, and there's so much wisdom in taking guidance from those who know or those who've done the work.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, we don't talk about this much, but TPM has been around for 8 years.
Yeah.
There's so many of these kind of pop-up, fly-by-night guy working out of his basement. He's done our course maybe and is, trying to now be a coach.
Yeah.
And I respect anybody trying to help other people, right?
Sure.
I don't want to slam them, but we've been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah.
We have a methodology that we've proven time and time again. We've invested in a 106-acre ranch for a retreat center so it's a brick and mortar almost versus online. And that's where you want to do it. You don't want to go to a doctor in an alley. Like where'd you go to medical school? I got a book. I just got a library book.
I had a builder say when I was interviewing him to do a remodel for me, I said, where did you learn? He said, YouTube.
Yeah. He said, next. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to be your first case study.
No, exactly.
I want the doctor that's done 1,000 of these procedures, not his first procedure.
Yeah. What could go wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing big at stake, just your marriage.
Yeah.
Your family.
So like guys going down to the bar and sitting chatting to their friends about their marriage, and that's the other thing is that guys do a lot of complaining instead of solving.
Yeah.
Right. And it's weird because we're fixers by nature. We try and fix in the relationship, and yet getting together with somebody who's a proper mechanic, a trained mechanic, who can get under the hood, seems to be something that we resist. And I don't know whether it's ego. I don't know whether it is fear of spending money on ourselves, fear of, what will she say if I spend money on myself, and yet we'll buy a massive TV or a new, RV or whatever it is. Guys have got RVs been sitting in their yards for years. Every winter, they take it out maybe once or twice a year, but they won't spend some money on their own self-improvement that's going to do that to your life.
Yeah, it's funny because so a lot of guys run our program through their business.
Yeah.
Right, as a business expense.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one guy, I won't say his name for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, this is the cheapest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because I came here for my marriage.
Yeah.
But now my business is soaring because obviously you solve one peg and everything else lifts, right? A rising tide lifts all ships. Yeah. And he runs at 100% through his company the whole time. And he's like, dude, I got to a client dinner, I'm spending $1,000.
Yeah.
He's like, this is nothing. And for what I'm getting out of this. So it's funny to just, again, it's just excuses. Whenever I hear these conversations, obviously I think, where am I doing this in my life? Where am I showing up with this hopium, right? The idea that I hope that it gets better.
Yeah.
And then hopefully when I discover that, I attack it straight on and take that first actionable step, which I think I'm pretty good at.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to reflect. It's also good for the guys to know that we don't promote ourselves as perfect and having solved everything. We work on ourselves continually.
Yeah.
And look at what we're doing and what we can do better. You know?
Absolutely, man.
And it doesn't get easier, you know?
Nope. Aspects of it get easier, right? But I think what you're trying to say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, like for you and Bonnie, when you don't argue, but Aaron and I arguing, like instead of it being 2 weeks, it's literally 30 seconds,
right.
You know?
Yeah, what I mean is facing up to the things that our energy, our nervous system and fear and whatever is trying to prevent us from facing.
Yeah.
That doesn't get easier.
No.
You know, telling Bonnie that I bought a motorcycle, that wasn't easy because I knew she had an opinion against motorcycles because of her brother and so forth. Now I've got two. Yeah. But so it doesn't get easier. However, on the other side of broaching something difficult, it gets better and there's more connection.
100%, man. I love always hearing when people meet us at events and they're like, wow, you're really authentic. You're exactly who you portray yourself. Like, there's no acting here. This is who we are 24/7 and perfectly imperfect, as I always like to say.
Yeah.
We're working on what we're working on. This is just one area that you and I have got down really, really well.
Yeah. Just a man doing the best he can, right?
That's 100%, 100%, and helping others along the way if we can.
Yeah.
Just like I hope the men listening to this, if they're an expert in another area, that they're raising their hand to help another man lift up.
Yeah.
To support their families and their hardships.
Yeah.
Awesome, Mark. So closing this out, if you were talking to a guy right now where he's like, yeah, you know what, it's just not the right time. I really need to invest my time or my money or my resources somewhere else. But you know what? Next quarter that I'm going to go in a program like the activation method or another one that's out there. What advice would you give them?
Well, firstly, I'd say tomorrow is not promised.
Yeah.
I've had situations, I've had friends waiting to repair the relationships with their children who didn't wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
So it gets real. The rubber hits the road when it's at that level. And there is no other time than right now. So, yeah. It's just about priorities, as you say. Show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. Well, is working on yourself a priority? Is that in your calendar? Is it something that's important to you? Is your relationship important to you? Have you created time to build that connection? And is it in your calendar or not? It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I'm going to give up a secret, Mark. When guys join the activation method, they actually have to do the work.
Yeah.
The coach will push you to do the work.
Yeah.
I hate to break that to you. Yeah. You will be calendaring out times with your coaches and with your group. You will be calendaring out the work.
Yeah.
But that's how you get to the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so worth it, right? I mean, I was sharing with somebody at the team retreat. Bonnie and I had difficulties at times. There was a really strong connection to something beyond the difficulties. And the secret for me was her daughter, whom I met at the age of 8, Danielle. She was kind of the glue at times when it was really difficult. And having that vision of a relationship where things would be amazing and the family unit would be truly connected kept me going through difficult, challenging times. And like I said, now, I'm almost embarrassed to say to guys, I've got a relationship where I don't argue, where I have absolute support. I feel loved, seen, valued, appreciated, and so does she, and that's worth gold to me. I don't care about much else,
I love that, brother. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine would be, if I were to give a piece of advice to that guy, it's the same thing I say almost every podcast is in the moment of insight. So when you get that insight, like, yes, my marriage is important. Yes, being at dinner with my family is important. Not having a divided house or whatever what else it is.
Yeah.
Take massive action.
Yeah.
Just
pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone. Get on a phone call with one of the advisors. And again, guys, like, I'm biased. I think our program's the best. We have amazing coaches like yourself that really give a damn, that care a lot about what we do and about the men. And if we didn't think our program was the best, we would flip and change it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
well, it's not only the coaches and the advisors, right? I mean, having spent time with the whole team, there are people who are behind the scenes who want it just as much for the guys who come on board. And that for me is something that's huge, that's pervasive in this movement, is everybody gives a damn. This is not something that's just, to rake in a few dollars. This is what makes a difference in the world.
That's why we call it a movement.
Yeah.
All right. I love you, man. Thanks so much for being here and all that you do.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Gentlemen, as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action, this time more than ever, right? Mark and I are sharing with you the most common thing that we hear from men is, they're hoping things are going to get better. And look, I've been there. I get it. Society teaches us to just wait a little bit because it's uncomfortable. But you know, and I know that growth lies outside of our comfort zones. It just does. It does in business, it does in our health, it does in everything that we do. But this is me calling you out to take massive action. Now, if you think TPM might, and I even mean might, be a good fit for you, jump on a call. Head over to thepowerfulman.com and just jump on a call with one of our advisors. You do have to fill out an application, schedule the actual call itself. But guys, it is worth it. You're going to get it at bare minimum. You will get a personalized insight from these amazing people. Most have been through our program and been with us for years helping men just like you. You'll get an insight. You'll get something actionable that you can take away, right? And that's invaluable. There's no risk to you. It's just a conversation. Now, for some reason you don't think TPM's the right fit, find something else. Guys, just do something. We're broaching on almost 1,000 episodes of the TPM podcast. We've been doing this for a long time, guys, and we're here to help you. But I can't do the push-ups for you, so to speak. You have to do the actual work. So in the moment of insight, take massive action, and we'll see you next time on the TPM Show.